So I want to talk about going along to get along. This is what the Holy Spirit has become to the apostate church. It's nearly everybody though. Like I find it very remarkable where the same things that the censors have been hiding are still being openly spoken. And even though I pointed back in the day on the internet, when I used to speak about all these different topics, I was actually received very well. Lots of people were like, "Yeah, oh, you're right. Oh, wow, that's correct. I never thought of it that way." And it was actually, it got a lot of traction very easily. I just explains things that I see in my perspective, and this came from the experience of my life. That my life was, I grew up in a house where like gaslighting and strangeness was that's what I grew up in, and a lot of unfair situations that I was, confused about. But it was something I recognized as an experience that I was going through that didn't have too much rational, purpose to it. Like I couldn't make heads or tails of how it was and why it was. But the fact that example of like what had forged me into kind of being who I was. It was like when I was like 6, I had like a near-death experience. I got stung by a bunch of wasps, and like hundreds of them. I counted 10 in one finger, and so I estimated maybe about 200 plus. But it was like painful, and for a moment I was like struggling to breathe. And at that point, I was like kind of like just concentrating on breathing, because I was like, the pain was kind of like aside from the fact. And when my father came home to find me, I had just like gotten through that breathing moment, and he laughs at me. He goes, "You're still breathing. You'll be fine." And he left. He didn't even like give me any inspection or anything. And it was like just like a drop. Like my world was like, "Oh, this is gonna be rough. This is it was like a coldness that was like really like fearful. Like I was like, wow, this is gonna be rough." And then not too long afterwards, well, anyway, that went on for quite a bit of time. Like another 12 years. I left when I was 18, and I didn't have any support, having even all throughout that in the school. It was like I saw that the rich people were bullies, and that they can get away with crime in the schools, and that this bullying crime system was pretty much, that's what they're doing in the schools. I had a very high IQ. I didn't have to study any of the work that we were doing, of the schoolwork. It was just easy. I would do my homework like in a homeroom class at the beginning of the day in like 10 minutes, and I wouldn't actually finish most of my homework. Was the problem. I would just try to get it. Sometimes I would in a couple minutes before the class starts, I would try to get my homework done real fast, which was a problem. The reason being is because my home life was so hostile. I didn't have the discipline to do the work, because I had such trauma that I was just trying to get out of trauma. That's what my mind would be like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this homework that I'm not going to get any credit for, like no cheers. Like literally, if I got a A on a test, the teacher would be angry at me, like, oh, you. There was not really any support, and at home certainly there was no support. It was just so that's why as a child in the school, I didn't really and what I wound up in trouble with was gym class. Not that I wasn't athletic. I was very athletic. It was just I didn't have the clothes for gym, and it's such a stupid problem. My father had plenty of funds. My brother and sister didn't have these problems, and the school, like, it shouldn't be basing grades, like, why can't I just wear my jeans, to gym class? But anyway, for not having the proper attire for gym class, I had gotten failure, and they took me out of the honors class. They held me back a year, and then they put me back in the regular class I was supposed to be. So I wasn't left back, because when they left me back, I didn't have to study everything. I can just do all the work, like, without homework. I can do it just in like a minute. And they're like, oh, he knows all the subject matter, because as you know, it's the same classes I took the year before. But like who are these educators? They're not educators. They're not looking to educate people they're looking to control this social hierarchy of the wealthy families. That's what's going on. That's what it was. I found that was part of my upbringing. It's like I learned that early, that bullying was part of the curriculum. The teachers would tell me, like, I was like, how could there be such bullying and such little, attention towards that from in fact that the school's endorsing it. It is the purpose of what they're doing, because there's a whole bunch, there's free will, but most of these people have relinquished their free will and they're evil. They're serving evil as good. That's what it is. That's what's going on. And rationally, you're not going to say, because it's like, what did the apostles of the word do? They went through very harsh treatments. Okay, standing in opposition to the unification of the world. Okay, the unification of the world is what the false church preaches, but Jesus didn't preach unification of this. He preached division from this. And when you do, you're going to be under trials and tribulations. But anyway, my life with the trials and tribulations, I came from a childhood where it was like rough. Like at that point at 6, when I was 6, that's a pretty, like, here's another example of like, like my birthdays aren't being celebrated, but my brothers and sisters are, and saying that this is like a position where I'm like, well, why is that? And there's no explanation. They never gave him an explanation. It's just, they're telling me that it's not happening. I'm being treated very well. I'm not being mistreated in any way, which is not true. It's just, it was, but that polarity of unification, that's the situation I was put in, where this is kind of like these are like NPCs almost. It's like it's a strain, or demons. Who knows? Like, I'm not saying I know for a fact what the deal is. I'm just saying that my upbringing brought me in a position where I was like, to speak boldly against the criminality. That's, people see it, right? They want to speak. They do speak out about certain things. But for me, it was very much. Like, yeah, I'm not, what am I going to lose to speak out against I want some justifications. And people, like, again, the nullification of truth, justification is not a concept. There's only nothing and oneness. That is how they look at it. And it's funny, that in all these years, like, on the internet, people are not, they don't have any consideration for the gospel. The gospel is the rational witness towards the trials and tribulations, okay? This is what the gospel is. It's a rational witness to trials and tribulations. That's what Jesus did, and this is what the apostles did. But the modern church, they don't do that. They just say, no, we're unified in oneness. And they become complicit in all the criminalities. But they're not taking credit as hey, being complicit in criminalities, no, that's God's holy way. But this is not God's holy way. This is the opposite. The Holy Spirit is to be a rational witness to the trials and tribulations. These guys exempt themselves from trials and tribulations, and they say, we've entered the heavenly realms. And it's not scripturally accurate. This is why they have to censor people. But what I'm like absolutely shocked by, back in the day, like I said, when I point out any of these things on the internet, I was received very well, and most of what I'm saying today is the same as what I was saying in prior times. Decades ago, I was saying the same thing. I haven't changed in what I'm saying, and back then nobody really recognized those things. But like I said, they were receptive of it. People were like, "Oh yeah," and I was actually quite easily popular. Now I'm being completely ignored. Like, people don't have, like, oh yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, I know about these things, but they really don't. They know on a passive glance some of what is being said, and then on a further examination, they're not interested. They're not interested in hearing these things, and they fall into a group of like hypocrites who are not very concerned. They're putting themselves up into the highest seats, just like any of these other people. Like, you say, who am I rebuking? The people I'm rebuking, they put themselves in the highest seats. They're in the divine heaven, in the realm. They're unified in all that's good and evil, and they've, sitting on their thrones of godliness. And these people today, they're not very receptive of what I'm saying. They're almost completely dismissive. And there's several things that have happened recently to make that the case. Like, they are conditioning people. They're brainwashing people to think, hey guys, if the person doesn't have like a lot of money and resources, you shouldn't be listening to them. You know, that's something they've done intentionally. They really have like put that out there on every, you know, platform, subliminally saying, don't listen to people who aren't funded and doing well. If they're not prospering, you shouldn't listen to these people. And that's not a hard sell to give to people. But they had to remind, that's how people are generally. They've been like that for years. This is just how people are. But they had to kind of respin it so people really are accepting of that idea. Oh yeah, if they're not prospering, we should definitely not listen to them. It goes back to Solomon's day. He said this, if a poor person saves the city, they give him no credit. That's what Solomon said that, and it's still true to this day. But I still find it astounding. It's shocking because, like, I'm looking at this list of concepts that are not recognized in the population, and you go, why are people woke leftists? Why are they? Because of these false principles that people on the right hold as true. That's mostly why. It's the list is like thousands of things, so it's a very tiresome process to bring these to light. And most people just dismiss. They don't care. They're not looking to learn any more than they already know. They're doing well, and they don't need to know more. And they go, oh, things will turn out great now because now things are going to be on track for a better day, and not necessarily the case. Looking at things like, particularly in my life too. Like, again, I was led, you would say, by the Spirit, to do the things I've done. And I've altered the course of events, and people will say, no, you haven't. Oh, I would say it's certainly recognizable that in the timeline of this world, my effects were very significant. There's, of the things I was saying 25 years ago, almost none of it was received. Initially, it was completely like I'm coming from left field, and now, like I said, I've said this for years now, like 95% of that is accepted as common knowledge, and pushing maybe to 97%. This is just a rough estimate, and I'm not really exaggerating. But there's still the 3% of stuff that's not understood, and it's very important, particularly in how things are going now. Like, where are the January 6ers? Why were the January 6ers held without trial? It wasn't just a few people in Washington, D.C. who did that. The great masses were cheering for the persecution of those people. There's a lot of people were. There's 160 something million of these people in this United States, probably cheering very adamantly for no trials, no mercy, persecute these people. That's not new. This has been going on, but let's consider the situation. And here now, like, what are they doing going forward? They're still saying, hey, prosperity, the prosperous are the good ones. Anybody who is under persecution, they're really bad people. They're making an exception for January 6th or so. Oh, great. Yeah, that's great. You accept it. You're making exceptions for January 6ers. But that's no different if you're pardoning the criminals like the Democrats are doing. People don't see that. Like, do you see, if you're just like, okay, that's all we got to do is pardon the January 6ers. Everything's good now. Now we're clean. And now they're just going to go the same path as the Democrats. They go, yeah. We pardon people for a virtue signal, but we don't want to inspect the actual things going on because we're quite delighted with the milk and honey that we're using to go by day in our gracious gratitude, for our lives. And they don't want to address a whole litany of issues. I'm just like saying, I'm shocked because there's like thousands of topics that I want to chime in on, and the people are dead ears to it. They don't have any concern. And I say, if the people have no concern for these thousands of issues, how correct do you think their procession is going to be from this point on? they're going to be no different than the Democrats. That's my point. And it's a very stark strangeness to go, how is it that these people are so dead to understanding? Like, it's thousands of issues that are very important, and I would think that I could just display one of these concepts to a person and go, oh yeah, I was on the wrong side of that one, and then be intrigued and learn they're probably wrong on all 1,000-something points, and then realizing, oh, wait a minute, I haven't been doing my diligence. I haven't been. Meanwhile, they're thinking, oh, certainly I have been doing all my diligence because I'm in the prosperity of my gracious gratitude, and that's all that needs to be. But that's what the Democrats are doing.